G'day, welcome to New Game Plus. Cringe here, back in my bedroom, not the brick wall set you've seen Jason in front of, not the RMI TV studio. As with last week, we have taken a break from regular segment shooting, and this week we thought it'd be a good opportunity to look at some of the more serious segments we've done over the years. From last year, we're going to have a look at the Working Lunch Initiative and the next exhibit that Meg checked out around PAX Australia. We're also going to be having a look at the gaming disorder classification from the World Health Organization, that on the level special from Don a few years ago, I think it was 2018, and we also have something from a bit further back that might be relevant now. We're going to speak to an expert on domestic violence and online threats, so let's get straight into it.
The next exhibit is a Working Lunch Collective initiative and showcases games made by indie developers from underrepresented communities. It's exciting because this year the theme is Made by Hand, which talks about the human stories behind game development. The space is a lot more open this year, which allows for attendees to come and hang out. But also game developers can come and talk about their games and their experiences within the industry. There are playable demos here from Australia and New Zealand developers as well.
We wanted to showcase not only these games made by underrepresented developers, but also the team themselves and the people behind these games and what goes into making these real heartfelt games. So we have little posters of about the team, about the game, some behind the scenes stuff of like early concepts and sketches.
And showing that journey.
Yeah, and people have really responded to that. It's a really great insight into what goes on with developers because we've got it written on one of the boards, developers are people. And yeah, people really love that they're seeing a little insight into the life of a game developer.
There are 4 games on display. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Yeah, so we've got Dollhouse, which is sort of an interactive dollhouse in a video game. There's no like win state or fail state. You're just free to kind of explore what is essentially a dollhouse with like beds, tables, chairs, little dolls, able to move around, and it really draws on that, I guess, childlike...
Like nostalgia?
Nostalgia, yes.
Yeah. And I've seen my personal favorite, the dog dating simulation game, Best Friend Forever. If you haven't seen it, check it out online at the moment. But can you tell us a little bit about how that's...
So that is a dating simulator cross dog care simulator. Yes. You do not date the dogs, but it's like a visual novel. Yes. So it's kind of in the style of something like Dream Daddy.
Yeah.
Where you create a character and you're moving to this new neighborhood, in a new city. And you have a dog, and then all your romantic options also have dogs. And you take care of your dog while meeting people, and maybe sparks fly. And
my heart is so full with this novelty right now. And I saw there's like a lot of granular things you can do to increase your dog's skills, and the activities you do reflect your relationship with your puppy, which is really wholesome.
You can pat the dog as you go on. You just click she's ball.
Now, there's also, next to this game, is the Continental Drift. That's a totally different shift in genres. Can you talk to me about that?
It's amazing. When I played it, I had shivers. It's like this, it's an in-browser game looking at themes of loneliness and where you belong. I think it's based on the developer's own experiences with moving around and trying to find where you belong. It's a really beautiful game. Yeah.
And the 4th title here on display is Unpacking, which is another really exciting indie title. And I love it because I guess it's a relaxing take at your own leisure. I guess another really aesthetically beautiful title.
Yeah. Unpacking is also like another great one. It's super zen.
Yeah.
And the developer, I was actually here earlier today talking about how it came out of her and her partner, like when they moved in together, they turned their unpacking into a game, like themselves, because they'd finish a box and it was like,
it's such an achievement. Yeah.
They gamified it.
Yes.
And so they turned that into a game, and it's really cute. It's so relaxing. The music is quite calming, but also just like the pixel aesthetic of it is super cute,
isn't it? It's irresistible.
And it's adorable, like organizing things. It's great.
While next exhibit only happens once a year at PAX Australia, other events from the Working Lunch run throughout the year. Taking part in multiple states across Australia and New Zealand, the program is designed to help underrepresented people build a long-term sustainable career in the games industry. They do things like workshops, seminars, one-on-one and group mentoring sessions with influential and experienced people in the industry. To hear more about their experience with the working lunch, we spoke with Shane Strawbridge from the Adelaide cohort.
I heard about a workshop on Twitter called The Working Lunch.
Talk to me about that. We were like, this sounds interesting. How can I get involved?
So essentially the Working Lunch is a group for, it's for minority groups kind of thing. So underrepresented devs, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's mainly for women and non-binary folk. And so, if you tick those kinds of boxes, you can apply. And so I was looking at it and I was like, as a non-binary dev, I was like, I'm interested in this. So I put my name forward, did all the little paperwork, and a couple months later, I found myself joining the Working Lunch Adelaide cohort. It was a rather small group. It was about 10 to 12 people, and we would gather, I think, about monthly in a meeting room in Games Plus, which is our kind of central game development hub in Adelaide. Yeah, exactly. So we would gather there and we would go through the Working Lunch program, which we would cover stuff like, how to find a job within the work industry, safely engaging with your workers, if you were LGBT, how to engage with your workplace and how to stay safe. We also covered, more broad topics like marketing your game and like how having to invoice people for money and stuff like that. With our mentors, we worked on very specific things. We tried to set ourselves some goals.
Right.
So my mentor was Ash McAllen.
Awesome.
And so we worked together I was a narrative specialist, and so was she. She really liked writing for tabletops and stuff like that. So we were working together to try and piece narrative together with other game design elements so that it wouldn't be so niche and I could start branching out, start wearing many hats, as the phrase goes.
Do you feel like you learned a lot? And I guess, what was the ultimate goal for you for the program?
Well, ultimately, I just kind of wanted to take my opportunity for game development further, and it really worked. Talking to Ash, she's put me in contact with a lot of great people.
Nice.
She was helping me, further my game development. She introduced me to a bunch of programs for game development and to help people get into game development. She even helped me get here to PAX. She's paid for my flights, and she, put me in contact with a couple of people to chat and learn some new things. So I've really found a lot of benefits coming from the Working Lunch.
Now that you've completed it and you're sort of on the other side of it, do you feel like you can approach your next steps for your career in a different way that you wouldn't have in the past?
Yeah, when I first graduated, I wasn't, I was like, I'm not really sure where to go in games. I still felt very directionless. But now that I've gone through Working Lunch, I've really started to realize these are the things that I can do. I feel a lot more confident in myself as well. I feel like I could actually go out there and start making content and joining companies and working with other people. So yeah, I feel a lot more confident. I feel like my abilities have improved. I got more connections now. I feel like I made a lot more friends, both high up in the industry and lower down. So it's just really interesting.
I feel like this got all the touch points covered, but I'm really happy for you and I'm so glad that you were able to experience the program and be selected to be a part of it. And thanks so much for your time and talking to us about the Working Lunch Collective and how the industry is really evolving from here with things like this, starting from the grassroots level. So thanks, Shane.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And if anyone wants to know more about the Working Lunch Collective, they should jump on Twitter or online on their website.
We're covering the topic of the day, which should have been the topic of the last 15 years, but domestic violence and online threats and harassment. We figured we'd go to a much more of a professional person in that field than ourselves.
Yes, well, we spoke to a man called Andrew Eager, who is a homelessness networker, helps our victims of this stuff. But firstly, what actually is a homelessness networker?
Basically, a homelessness networker role is about resourcing the homelessness and family violence services within the region. So obviously we look at working with the agencies and working with practitioners and doing training and then working with the governments as well as around what's happening within the regions and looking at that policy development at the same time.
Now, we hear the term domestic violence, but do we really understand what it is? What actually are we talking about here?
Look, I think we would say that when it comes to violence against women, family violence, domestic violence, there's a lot of those issues that we would say. A lot of people say it's drinking and it's stress and it's drug and alcohol, all those sort of things.
The easy explanations?
Absolutely. And look, and they generally may play a part in it. But the violence is actually a choice. you make a choice to be violent. Having emotions such as anger and frustration are one thing. Stepping over the line and becoming aggressive and violent is a choice that you need to make. We can change that. So the community understanding is changing, and this is a real positive thing. Vic Health do a survey around community attitudes, and the community attitude is changing. So as you said, most people will understand now, it's been in the media enough, the talk enough to say, it's not right, it's wrong, we need to stamp it out. But I think part of the problem is that I think the underlying issues and these sort of intricacies, and because it's such a widespread problem and everybody experiences a bit different, we're still grappling with an understanding within the community of what we're talking about. When you define family violence and domestic violence, we're looking at power and control. So it's around someone using physical violence, emotional violence, economic violence, spiritual violence, all of those things to put power and control over somebody. So it's not an argument. As you said, a lot of relationships will have an argument. And usually from that argument, we would actually, most of us would probably go, look, I said things that I regret, and I won't say that again. Or I slammed a door and I know I shouldn't have done that and I won't do that again. Recognise it, address, move on. But when we talk about violence against women, we're talking about power and control. We're talking about extended behaviours to enforce some control over somebody. That's the difference.
Now, often the common response when you discuss domestic violence is that men are victims of domestic violence too. I guess it's important to ask how that's framed in the reaction to women as victims of domestic violence, and also our understandings of masculinity.
Look, I've been doing social work 20 odd years, and I've done a child protection, family support, housing, homelessness. The reason that I do this focus on family violence is because that has been a common thread. For the whole 20 years, that's been a common thread. And I can see that the majority of times when we're talking about violence within the home, we're talking about men's violence against women. And that's why we focus on men's violence against women. That is the predominant. There's no escaping that at this time. Homeless services, up to more than 30% of people in homeless services are there escaping family violence. Majority of those women and children. I'm not denying, and most of us aren't denying, that men are victims of family violence too. My thought about that is that we need to start a different narrative. Men experience violence differently, and I don't think we have the support structures around. I don't think we have a cultural definition of what masculinity is to be even socially support a male who has been a victim. That's what we need to work on.
It's a different discussion?
It's a similar discussion, but I think the focus needs to be different. And I think that Julian Blanc's the American coming over, preaching how to pick up women by abusing them. And the question to me, that has been raised is about who goes to these and why? How does this happen? I think the answer really is that we have this perception that men, one, we can't control our sexual urges and we're all the same. And two, that, there's still this community perception that women like the bad guy. So I think a lot of these guys are actually going, following that misconception that we have in this community that this is what masculinity is in Australia, that, we need to be tough and aggressive and strong. And then we've got to have this discussion about what that means, and we've got to have this discussion about gender equality and how we treat women and the language that we use.
Now, one of the big factors here is the language we use. So we asked, how does our use of language around this issue affect our perceptions of it?
And I think online we talk about these extreme cases. We do talk about people that die. We do have up to 2 women a week being killed by present and previous partners. So that is a huge issue. But the predominant issue that we can do, the work that we can do immediately, the work that we all need to do is looking at this language that we use and looking at how we treat women and where we do, put women in there. And that Vic Health survey again, basically it's still seen that, women aren't seen in the community as they shouldn't be. This is a community attitude, is around getting, these higher roles or being a board members or, being a CEO of an agency. And you can see that the numbers aren't there. The positive again for me is I think when I do some of this work and I talk with the younger generation, when we talk with footy clubs, under 18 footy clubs or schools and things like that, and we have this conversation about gender equality and what it means, we engage a really good conversation with the younger generation. They seem to get it better than some of the older generations probably do. We get stuck in our ideals. So there is a real hope there that once we have these conversations and we look and we question some of these social norms that we have, that's where we can get more engagement from the community.
So how do we characterise like sincere threats and general disagreement? Like, is there a way that we can acknowledge it online and act if we do observe it actually happening to other people?
I think that's it. I think just where do we draw the line? And I think on the online, this is a big part of this conversation, is where do we draw the line? Where does frustration, anger and disagreement become threats of assault, rape? And, it's not such a fine line. It's fairly black and white. It's okay to disagree, and it's okay to verbalise a disagreement of someone who, when you have a different point of view. When you start threatening them, that's not right. If you did it in public, people would pick it up, and you would expect consequences from that behaviour if you were in public and you threatened someone with violence. Yeah. Why is it different online? And I think that's where the internet will grapple with this for a while. This online we'll all grapple with this a little bit until we can find this conversation. I'm not sure if we learn to need to disagree. I think we probably know how to disagree. I think sometimes we tend to like to do the extremes, and I think when we're talking about social media and things like that, where everybody's a bit of an expert on it, and where you can sort of be more verbal and more aggressive in your language, with a bit of an LOL on the end, and then it's okay. No, it's not. It's about self-regulation, and it's about the conversation. It's about the narrative that we will form as a community by having these conversations. And we're having these conversations now. You and I are here having this conversation, whereas 5-10 years ago, that wouldn't have been likely.
Well, as a father, I'd say a very good litmus test would be, well, what am I comfortable with people saying to my own daughter?
There's a discussion there, isn't there, as of where, how much would you expect? How much would you put up with as a father if that was your daughter being threatened?
No.
Yeah, where would you get to that point where you kind of, talking to your daughter about, okay, well, you need to, keep yourself safe, and this is just an argument, and, you need to learn to stick up for yourself. Where's the cutoff where you kind of go, no, that's not appropriate and I need to now step in and do something? If you were in public, that would be fairly obvious. We need to get better at defining that online as well. And we need to be better at understanding what our children's online life is like, and engaging with our kids, and young people with their online experience as well, so that we can walk through that. It is about educating them on, putting something on Facebook or putting something on Twitter, which is just a little catchphrase. If you know the person, you know where they're coming from. If you don't know the person, you don't. And so that comment can be read, misconstrued, and lead on to a discussion that you would otherwise have. Do we teach the younger generation to be sceptical of what they see and to question what they see? They're going to get bombarded with media that we've never been exposed to, bombarded by advertising, and sexist visuals and all this sort of thing in advertising. I think one of the things we can do is teach the younger generation about how they step up and go, no, I don't think that's right. I'm going to act on my gut feeling to say there's something wrong with that.
I mean, is it as simple as raising the standards of gender equality in the wider community? Like, is there particularly something else that we need to consider in this conversation?
And it all feeds into that, all feeds into that social norms that we're talking about. And it comes back, and I'll keep bringing it back to this gender inequality, and there's this discussion about gender equality. In other countries, when they have a better focus on gender equality, their family violence rates are lower. When there's other countries where there's less emphasis on gender equality, the family violence rates tend to be higher. There's an obvious key there, and I think it's around how we discuss this and how we change our attitudes.
So what can people do if they feel threatened or they're worried about their safety, or even if they just like a little bit more information about this?
Look, I think I'll go back to getting information about your own situation. I think this is where this conversation gets complex for the community and for people, because everybody's experience is going to be different. Everybody's understanding of what is abuse and what's not. There's a grey area in there that we're grappling with as a community. I would say to people, there is websites available, there is information available. Our Watch website has the information that you need. 1-800-RESPECT is a phone number you can ring. If you've got those, then you can get some information and some understanding about your situation and what you can do.
In mid-June, the World Health Organization released an update to its international classification of diseases. Amongst the new diseases added were not the modern-day afflictions you'd expect, like Netflix queue paralysis, hot shingles in your area, and starwarts. Still be more enjoyable than Solo. No, instead, we got this.
Now the World Health Organization is, for the first time, calling gaming disorder a mental health condition.
It should be clearly defined behavioral pattern which is of such intensity and of such nature that it takes precedence of other activities which have been important for an individual in the past.
Yes, the WHO has added gaming disorder to its disease database. It suddenly makes those Eat Sleep Game shirts sound more like a desperate cry for help. But what does gaming disorder actually mean? The WHO lays out 3 criteria: impaired control over gaming, increasing priority given to gaming to the extent that it takes precedence over other life interests and daily activities, and continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. Sure, this may just sound like Thursdays for you, but the WHO emphasised that these symptoms have to be severe and that they must last at least 12 months. It told CNN that, quote, millions of gamers around the world would never qualify as people suffering from gaming disorder. You'd think that in this modern world, gaming disorder would be one of many behaviours marked as addictive, such as smartphone usage and binge watching it. No, the only other one listed is gambling disorder. Wait. Is the only reason gaming disorder a thing is because a kid of a head doctor has been playing too much Fortnite? God damn it, that's totally the case, isn't it? Other behavioural addictions which have been written about in medical journals but not considered by the WHO include addictions to food, exercise, and sex. There have even been 6 articles written on tanning addiction. 6! But it is a very real thing. I can think of at least one victim of tanning addiction, although I think that is the very least of that man's disorders. Opinion amongst the medical and scientific community is divided on the categorization of gaming as a disorder. Critics question the methodology behind the studies that went into the WHO's decision and argue that there generally isn't enough hard research to prove that gaming itself is causing addiction. In a paper to the Journal of Behavioral Addictions, the authors say that if gaming is a coping behavior for depression, ADHD, or other disorders, quote, it would make more sense to explore the underlying causes for this behavior first, and to be sensitive to the extent which treating these might resolve the gaming problems. The gaming industry as well has come together to criticize the inclusion of gaming disorder. Many industry bodies, enough to make a veritable alphabet soup, released a statement criticizing the WHO for its decision, adding that, quote, video games across all kinds of genres, devices, and platforms are enjoyed safely and sensibly by more than 2 billion people worldwide. This is all fine and well, but the gaming industry kinda has to take some responsibility here. Just last May, both Belgium and the Netherlands found that loot boxes in some of today's biggest games fall under the country's gambling regulations. And even outside of this, games are being designed to keep you playing even beyond the point of fun. Now, raise your hand if you've ever told yourself one more game. Not because you're having fun, but because you're so close to leveling up and unlocking a loot box. Now, I can't actually see you raise your hand. I recorded this several weeks ago, but I'm assuming you have all of your hands straight up. The issue here isn't the acknowledgement that people can get addicted to video games. Even if the science is still out on how to properly define gaming addiction, the fact is there are people out there who exhibit the symptoms of addiction, which may happen to manifest through gaming. The problem is what people will do with this new categorization. Just like with any piece of science, people are going to look at this story and take away the wrong message. You can just imagine a mother complaining about her son's addiction to Overwatch because he played it all Friday night, right before diving into her 3rd glass of wine because the news said wine reduces heart attacks. It doesn't. Morning show segments are already labeling functional gaming as addictive because kids shouldn't be spending time playing Fortnite with their friends. They should be doing something less corrosive to the mind, like watching hours of inane breakfast television. This is all a shame because some good can come out of the WHO's move. With this formal recognition, those addicted may eventually be able to access the help they need from the public health system, such as Australia's Medicare, the UK's National Health Service, or America's, thoughts and prayers? There is no doubt that gaming in moderation can be rewarding, but we also have to acknowledge that for some people, gaming, for whatever reason, may detrimentally take over their lives. Sure, the WHO adding gaming disorder to its disease database is about as tactful as inviting Batman to the Melbourne Festival of seedy alleyways, but it's not going to set back gaming as much as feared. If you're worried about our hobby being further stigmatized, prove the haters wrong by being the best you can both in and outside of video games. And if you're worried that a friend, child, or loved one is exhibiting signs of addiction, talk to them. For someone who may have seemed so far gone, even the smallest emotional tether may prove vital. Or if they're suffering from Star Wars, I know the WHO is looking for new diseases. And that is everything that has happened in the world, ever.
And that's a wrap on this week's show. Thanks so much for hanging out. If you want more New Game Plus, check us out on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Probably got other social medias, but at least all of those are /NewGamePlusTV, and the website is newgameplus.tv. But yeah, that's it for this week. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you next time.